Welcome to this edition of Morgan You Asked For podcast. This does not happen very often, but we are here together at my place. It's almost Thanksgiving. I'm off for Thanksgiving break now. Trevor's back in town for the week. And as we said, it's more difficult when we're here in town, and it was difficult getting this. We kind of planned last night, but he got to town a little earlier, and it's harder, but we made it work. Not sure how long this is going to go. It's going to be mainly college focused today. And again, just welcome, Trev. And here we go. Hopefully everybody's ready for a great Thanksgiving week. We both have our beers, Ames Lager, and he's got Busch Light. And we're ready to go for the weekend.
Yeah, it's nice to do this in person. I think we've only done this one other time over the years. So, busy schedule, only back for a few days. So trying to see everybody, get caught up, seeing friends and family, and then obviously making this work here. You know, we probably won't go as long tonight, I don't think, but that's all right. At least we were able to get together.
Yeah. Obviously the main topic this week is the college football playoff, college football, who's getting into the championship games, and Iowa State's right in the mix. They win. They're almost in. It's not 100%. It's not win and you go. But 5 things is what I read have to happen for them not to go. So the odds of that are not good, but I will say this. There's been a lot of things that had to happen to make Iowa State even eligible to get to the Big 12 championship game, and they all happened. Last week was almost a perfect weekend. If Texas Tech would have lost that game to Oklahoma State and it was end up really a close game, it would have been a perfect weekend. But still, it's all you can ask for. Saturday night, Jack Trice Stadium, you win. It's like 95% chance you're going to the Big 12 championship game. It's one of the biggest games. I hear people say it's the biggest game ever in Cyclone history. I'm not going to say that. It's probably first or second ever in Jack Trice Stadium. I would say the biggest game in Cyclone history was the Big 12 championship game against Oklahoma in 2020. That would have got you a Big 12 championship, something that essentially has never happened in Cyclone history. So we're on pace to do that again. You win 2 games here, you're in the playoff, and we go from there.
Yeah, it's things are lining up for Iowa State. Last week was crazy. I didn't get to watch all the games, but 6 or 7 top 25 teams lost. Mm-hmm. So that opens the door for Iowa State. Colorado losing. I saw in your power rankings, I just didn't have time to get mine out today, but I would agree with yours having Kansas won.
They're good.
Their record doesn't look good, but the last 3 weeks, I don't think there's anybody in the Big 12 playing better. Obviously, they keep knocking off everybody that's like in the first or second spot there. So I liked your power rankings, the brief look that I took at them. But for Iowa State, I've got the schedule pulled up because again, I'm so far behind this week on stuff with traveling and things like that. But 6:30 Jack Trice, and I assume you're going to be there?
Yep, I'll be there, bundled up, coveralls, hand warmers. It's going to be cold. I'm actually going to go up tomorrow to Ames and get the camper. It's there right now, but it's just going to be too cold. It's going to be, even sitting in the camper, we could turn the heater on. It's still just not going to be enjoyable before or after the game. So I'm going to go up tomorrow, get it, and put it away for the year. I have to have it out Sunday anyway. So, we're going to go up tomorrow, get it out of there, and then we have our spots. So we'll be able to park there and have a beer or two and then head in. But it's not going to be weather to go hang out for a couple hours and grill or cook or anything. You would just sit in your camper anyway. So we're probably just going to go up later, get to the game, and then obviously if Iowa State wins and is going to a Big 12 championship, might hang out a little bit longer, but it's going to be a late night, and we're just going to drive home after, sleep in a nice warm bed.
You might have to have that camper ready to go to the Big 12 championship or to go to one of the playoff games if they make it.
Well, it's the camper's not going anywhere after this week, but I will be going if they do make it to the Big 12 championship game and to the playoff game. I'm not going to say 100% on the playoff game because a lot of it does matter when they play and where they play, but a 90% chance I would go.
Yeah,
it's just one of those.
I don't blame you. That's a pretty special opportunity if they do make it. So, yeah, I know with school and all that kind of stuff, it depends on the schedule. But, yeah, if you can get to that game, if they make it, that would be pretty awesome. So, yeah, things are lining up for Iowa State. What do you think of some of the performances last week? Like I said, I only got to watch a little bit of college, so I'm behind this week.
Well, with Iowa State, they played about and Jeff Woody was really good, former Iowa State running back. He was on before and after the game and everything, and he was really good. And he has a podcast on Tuesdays, and he goes, just for round numbers, he goes, let's say there's 200 plays in the game. Iowa State won 190 of them, but the 10 plays they lost were really bad losses. Like it wasn't a 50-50. It was a 95.5% Utah won. Block punt for a touchdown, a pick six, a dropped punt. That's 17 direct points because the defense on the muff punt, they didn't go anywhere. They kicked a field goal. So the defense didn't give up anything. And obviously the 2 touchdowns that the defense didn't have any part of. So there's 17 points. And so they gave up the 90-yard touchdown, which is not good. But realistically, to not give up any touchdowns is not reasonable. Iowa State's defense hasn't been great. The one drive they had to get a new quarterback in, and they were not prepared for that and running that zone read with a different quarterback because I think his name's Isaac Wilson. Zach Wilson's little brother is not the running quarterback. But the guy they brought in after he got hurt is much more of a runner. But here, good teams find a way to win. They didn't do it against Texas Tech. They did do it against Iowa. They did do it against Cincinnati. Cincinnati or Central Florida. And then they did do it against Utah. So most of the times they did it, and it's you're down to one game now.
Yeah, for Iowa State, it's not really about style points at this point in the season. You just got to win. Obviously get to the Big 12 championship and then win that. But Utah's a tough place to play. That was one that I had circled. I thought they were going to end up losing. You asked me last week if they could win. I thought it'd be too tough, but they pulled it out. Utah, as bad as they are this year, that's one of the tougher places to play out west.
Yeah, I had them undefeated going into this week and losing. If you go back to our preseason predictions, so I thought we all thought Utah would be better, and kind of getting back to Kansas, putting them at number 1 in this week's power rankings. Kansas was picked like second or third in the league, so they're supposed to be this good. For whatever reason, the first 5 or 6 games they couldn't figure it out. They were like 1-5. Things, bad bounces, fumbles, late, turnovers, things happen. And it happened. And for Iowa State and Arizona State and BYU and Colorado, good, because keep winning games and keep beating each other, but they're out. They're not going anywhere. They're not even bowl. They have to win this week to get bowl eligible still. That's how bad they started. But Kansas is playing the best by far and showing how good they were if things didn't go bad at the beginning of the year. And who would have thought Utah and Oklahoma State, the other top teams that were predicted, would be dead last with 1 win in the conference between them, and that was a Utah against Oklahoma State game at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, the Big 12 is all backwards from what we all thought it was going to be. I thought Oklahoma State and Utah would be good because they both always are under their current coaches, and I thought Iowa State would be decent. They're doing better than I expected at this point. Colorado's another nice surprise, but I think I did see something before I got here. If Kansas didn't play the final 2 minutes of all their losses, they'd be undefeated or something like that.
Maybe 1 loss
or 1. Yeah.
They would be really good there. Yes, that is 100% correct. They would be right there for everything. And then just, a little bit of commentary here on just tiebreakers. I said there's 5 things that have to happen. The conferences are too big. Games that happen in September, games that happen against teams you don't play. That's some of the freakiness of the Big 12 is you have 4 teams that are at the top: Iowa State, Arizona, Colorado, and BYU. And Iowa State does not play any of the 4, which is crazy. That just happens, and that's the problem with these big conferences. But what happens in a Texas Tech West Virginia game, because of the conference record against like opponents, that's one of the criteria, matters. So we're actually huge West Virginia Mountaineer fans this week as well.
So who's West Virginia got?
Texas Tech. Iowa State needs Texas Tech to lose. It's not 100% that they need them to lose, but that's one of the things that will help Iowa State.
Okay, so they need Texas Tech to lose. Arizona State are they in the most control right now?
I think so.
Is there anybody?
I don't think anybody has 100% control.
Okay.
I do not think there's anybody, because there's actually still ways if Iowa State loses, they go. If everybody loses, I think I did see that, because there would be a 4-way tie if everybody loses again, that Iowa State and Arizona State play. So like I said, Iowa State has more. That win against Baylor is actually really good, because Baylor's playing really well right now. The win against Cincinnati's not bad, because they have a winning record. TCU is doing better, a win against them. So they didn't play the top 4 teams, but they played like everybody right after them. Like, we didn't play Oklahoma State, who's not good. We didn't play Arizona, who's not good. So we skipped a couple of those teams that don't have any wins or one win. So their conference strength of schedule is actually pretty good.
Yeah, no, they played a pretty good schedule this year, plus a win on the road at Iowa. That's always a big one to get versus the rival there. Colorado had a bad week, but they got taken down by Kansas, which I don't think anyone was too shocked by that, the way Kansas has been playing lately.
I was surprised at how it wasn't close.
It wasn't very close.
The Arizona State BYU game ended up being absolutely crazy, rushing the field, taking the goalpost down, and then have to put them back up for 1 second. Yeah, and then, just elsewhere in college football, the SEC is a complete and utter mess right now too. Ole Miss essentially was in the playoff, but they lost to Florida, who's a 500 team. Mm-hmm. I think Alabama lost again to Oklahoma, which is a bad or 500 team. So that's the issue, is you're going to have, and like playoff predictors, it's going to come out later tonight, that has SMU in the playoff along with Miami. That's the prediction. I'd like to almost see SMU run the table and win that ACC. I know Clemson's going to have a say in that. Clemson doesn't have a say in it because they're done playing ACC games. But it could be I don't even know who's going to go to the ACC championship game, if it's Clemson, Miami, and SMU tie. I don't know who goes there. But we'd like to see one of those teams or a few of those teams lose to maybe give. I just don't see how Iowa State has any chance to get into a playoff with 3 losses, or Colorado or BYU or Arizona State into the playoff with 3 losses with a loss in the big. So it's still 1. So ultimately it doesn't matter. The big thing is you want to get that bye, which would be nice if the ACC would lose a couple. It'd be nice to see Boise State lose, but who steps in above them? I'm going to ask you a question here, Trev. Let's use Iowa State as an example. Plays Kansas State, who is, I do not believe, ranked as of now. They could be ranked when we come in here this Saturday. But if they're not ranked, they're going to be 26, 27, 20. They're right on the cusp of the top 25. And then obviously you're going to play a ranked team that's going to be ahead of you, I believe. Is that enough to pass Boise State and get the bye, even if Boise State wins the rest of their game? Because they're going to play 2 tougher games than Boise State's going to have.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be able to now, since everybody's got 2 losses, right? And Colorado with 3 actually. So 6-2 in the conference, all 4 of those are. I don't know if they can jump Boise State if Boise State wins out. The committee seems to be a little bit high on Boise. So the Big 12, though, I will say I think they're only getting 1 in at this point.
They beat up on each other too much.
And another problem is the SEC. You got all these teams that are going to have 9-2, 8-3s. You know they're going to put them in.
Yeah, so
as much as they can.
That's going to be the committee's problem. Let's just say Texas wins against Texas A&M, and it's Texas and Georgia in the SEC championship game, and Texas wins that game. Georgia beat Texas earlier, but Texas wins the SEC, so they're in. They get a bye. They got 1 loss on the year to a very good Georgia team. Georgia's got 3 losses. you have to put them in the playoff, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And we've talked about this, and I've said that they are the team that got screwed last year. They had one loss in the SEC championship game against Alabama, coming off back-to-back national championships. And they're the team that got screwed more than even Florida State. And you're going to leave them out again by losing the SEC championship game with 3 losses. And that's where Lane Kiffin, obviously they're out now with losing to Florida, but he made the point where those 2-loss teams in the SEC didn't want to get to the championship game because now you have 2, and then the loser, as of Georgia, loses. Now they got 3. Ole Miss and Alabama would have jumped Georgia in that scenario in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's another reason that they need to play more conference games like everybody else. That would help with some of this. But yeah, if Georgia loses the SEC championship game, they still got to get in for me because the SEC, they're going to want at least 4 SEC in. So you got to put 4 teams. Well, Texas, obviously, they look like the best right now, but Georgia did beat them. So I think those 2 are kind of locks.
Yep.
And then it comes down to the mixture of Tennessee, A&M, South Carolina have been playing better lately, and you leave in Alabama, a Missouri, and an Ole Miss out.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Who does Indiana play this week? Do you know?
Indiana?
Well, they play Purdue, so they're going to beat Purdue. Ohio State's going to beat Michigan. How far does Indiana fall this week? They don't fall as far as they should have because the SEC teams all lost.
That I'll be interested to see somewhere between 10 and 14.
So you do think they fall essentially out of the top 10, maybe number 10?
Well, the SEC teams lost. Because in my opinion, they didn't look that great. They had some bad plays that really cost them in that game with special teams and some other stuff going on. They looked overmatched. I wondered how it was going to be because they got a score early, and then Ohio State tied it up, and you kind of wondered if Ohio State was going to run away with it, which they kind of did in a way.
It got a little crazy there at the end, but
Indiana didn't look super impressive to me. But yeah, since all the other teams lost, I mean, they got to drop some, I would think. I just don't know how 4 Big Ten teams can be, in the top 5 again.
No, they won't be that. But I almost think they're going to be 8 or 9. I do think they're still in. I really wish Minnesota would have pulled that out against Penn State. We both don't like Penn State, and it's not necessarily we don't like Penn State. We don't like James Franklin.
Yeah.
Penn State has their own issues, and James Franklin does not help that cause at all. But yeah, I think essentially with what's happened, 4 Big Ten teams are almost a lock. I just think they're going to put 4 SEC teams in. I don't know who it is. I don't know who the locks. I mean, the locks are really it's just
championship.
Yeah, it's really just Texas because they're the only one with 1 loss. Everybody else has got more than 1 loss. Now it was a boat race job by Georgia. I mean, Georgia it wasn't good at all. But I think Texas can lose to A&M, and I think they still get in. So really only 1 lock, but the places are locked.
Mm-hmm.
So then you got Boise State, you got the Big 12 champ, and then Notre Dame, as long as they don't lose. See, that's another team. If Notre Dame would lose to USC, they're out, I think. I don't know if you would jump all those 3-loss SEC teams in, I believe, over Notre Dame. But this is a TV product, and Notre Dame's, you could argue, is the biggest name in all of college football.
We've talked about it plenty of weeks on here. They're going to want to get Notre Dame in if they can. But if Notre Dame does lose again, I'd probably be okay with them not making it.
It'd be 2 losses to 2 unranked teams.
Right. So I'd be okay with Notre Dame not getting in. So, yeah, I think right now we're looking at 4 Big Ten, 4 SEC, Big 12, Boise, ACC. So that gets us to our 11, right?
Right.
And then will the SEC get another team in? Will Notre Dame get in?
Or another ACC? Because ACC has, if Miami would win out, and SMU essentially went out, maybe not get to the conference title game. They both have 1 loss, so those 2 would probably get in.
Yeah, that's kind of my thinking. So, the Big Ten should still get 4, SEC 4. That's right, and then Big 12 is only getting 1 in at this point, just because it was a wild weekend though. Every time I looked at my phone when I could, it was just there's another team losing. And
we talked about this. That Texas Tech loss is just going to come back. If they would have hung on to that game, then they would control their own destiny. And then with 1 loss, with what's happened, there's going to be more of an argument. I don't think it still would happen with 2 losses, but there would be more of an argument to have that second Big 12 team in. But with what's happened, there's just no way it's happening.
No, not right now. They're just getting one in this year, but we've talked about it too. I don't know how soon they can. I don't know if you've heard, but this thing's going to get bigger than 12.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time. There's money to be made. But the number one thing that needs to happen, and it's the SEC's got to go to 9 games. Mm-hmm. And then I think what needs to happen is you need to go everybody play 10 power teams or make 10 conference games.
10 conference games, yeah.
10 conference games would be fine, but maybe one step before that is if you go to 10 conference games, Cyhawk's out. I guarantee it. It will be done. But if you go 9 conference games, but you have to play one other of the Power 4, and maybe you can sign Boise would be one of those. Notre Dame. You can make a few exceptions of teams that are traditionally really good, where you have to play 10 of those. Then you could keep those. Then Oklahoma State could go back to playing. Texas and Texas A&M could have been if they wouldn't. Now they're in the same conference, but those rivalry games, West Virginia Pitt, West Virginia Penn State, like they played this year, those type of games could still happen if you go 9, but you have to play 10. And that's what the SEC does do that. They play 8, but one of the non-conference games does have to be a Power 5 game. Okay. And so they played 9 Power 5, but Iowa State and Iowa, they play 10. So it's still one short. And then even if they don't, it needs to be like everywhere else where you don't do it November 20th. It needs to the preseason games need to be in the preseason. Right. November, you should not be playing Mercer.
No, because that's essentially
it's another bye. It's a
bye week. That's true. I don't really like that either. See, getting them to go to 9 is the first step, and I think they probably know that. And depending what happens this weekend too, it could cause a bunch of headaches. So I think the SEC can look at that and realize we've got a problem here year one.
Right.
One way to, eliminate that or less of a chance of it is to get to 9 conference games.
Yeah. If you go to 9 and then you take away that have to Power 4 or 5, conference, then you're getting closer. Ohio State, a lot of times they didn't play. Was it last year? They played the worst schedule. No, it was Michigan that played like the worst non-conference schedule you could ever have. Now it didn't matter when you win the Big Ten and then you go win your playoff games. You proved you were the best. But Iowa and Iowa State play that 10th game, but you don't have to. And some teams don't. But we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, that's one way that they're going to have to kind of eliminate that problem is get to 9, and then of course it'll expand. Now, what number do you think it'll expand to? Like the final version or the version that they go with for a long time, maybe
24.
Okay,
I think that. And I think in that scenario, it's going to look a little bit more like the NCAA basketball tournament where the Sun Belt is going to get in, the AAC, the Mountain West, they all get 1, how many ever it is.
Right.
And then so let's say there's 6 of those. So there's 18. Well, let's just say there's 10 conferences, those 10. So there's 14 at large. So you can get 4 more SEC, 4 more Big Ten, 2 ACC, and 2 Big 12 extra. Just like they do in the NCAA tournament where, those small conferences all get in, but the Big Ten and the SEC and the Big 12 get 9, 10 teams in.
Now, if you go to 24, I'm trying to picture it in my mind, but would you have teams with buys or would everybody just?
I think you have to.
Right.
Because I think there is something to it. I mean, even in the NFL, they've only went to 1 bye. Even if it is only the 1 and 2 seed get a bye, that is an advantage if you can get there. I do think you need to have advantage. And then the other thing, I think they're gonna see, and we're gonna learn this. And we talked about this, and Jamie Pollard, talked about this, but some of these teams and everything is when they go play in that semifinal or the quarterfinal, not the semifinal. They go to the game. It's in the Fiesta Bowl, but it's not a bowl game. It's the teams are going to go play the game and go home because you played a week. Some of you played a week before, and so you don't have time to be there all week. You don't. And then if you win, you got to get out of there because you got to go play again.
Mm-hmm.
So the Fiesta Bowl is not going to be the Fiesta Bowls. They're not going to have the parties. They're not going to have, the get-togethers. And so I think some teams, they're going to get at least one more round at college campuses going forward. That'd be another change. And maybe the semis at the big bowls, and then obviously the national championship can be wherever.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to see a second round of home playoff games for the higher ranked teams, because everybody knows that the matchups they're fun to think about. We talk about every single week on here, the Southern teams having to go north. That we all want to see that. Everybody does, probably except the Southern teams and their fans. Right. But if you can get 2 rounds of those extra home playoff games, that's more money for the universities, more exposure, and it's what people want to see, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just we've talked about this. Like Notre Dame can never get to the quarterfinals, but then also if you're the number 1 team in the country, so 9 times out of 10, the number 1 team in the country is going to be in the Big Ten or the SEC. So your best conference's champion is never going to get a home game in the playoffs. So, I mean, you think about Alabama and Georgia in the last 5 years, they never have a home game in the playoff because they're always the 1 or 2 or 3 seed. And that's great, and that's what you want, but you're gonna sit home and watch December 20th and 21st. You're gonna be at home. You're great that you're still playing. You're in it. You're practicing. But you're gonna sit there and Notre Dame's gonna host a game, or Ohio State's gonna host a game. Let's say they lose Oregon again, and be like, that would be really, really cool. But yet you never have a chance if you have that. Or I mean, watching at Oregon, or like you said, December 20th, December 21st. We're talking about how cold it's going to be November 30th. It could be really cold in Ames, Iowa, or Iowa City, or Notre Dame, or Penn State, or Ohio State, for that matter, Michigan. And it would be really fun to watch those Miami come up to Penn State, or Miami go to Michigan. We see the Miami Notre Dame game every once in a while now with the ACC, but Alabama going to Michigan would be awesome. And just like the other night in Cleveland, Pittsburgh game, first half was fine. It was cold.
We got a furry friend here.
Yeah, we do have a furry. I mean, some of you can see that. Atticus is here, and he's becoming friends with Trevor here.
I got to multitask right now.
Yeah, he's not letting you not pet him. But yeah, first half was fine. It was chilly. Wasn't super cold. When it snows like that, it's not super cold. But then it turned into a straight up snow globe in the second half, and it'd be funny to watch those Miami guys or Florida State guys or Alabama guys. Some of those guys never see snow.
Yeah, I would love to see that. And you're right. I think the first 2 rounds, if they expand, need to be for home playoff games. That way, those top seeds, they get a bye plus a home playoff game. Yep. That's what you should earn that for being one of the top, call it 4 or whatever it would be.
I agree. I mean, it's just they should. That's probably enough college for this college football. Let's transition to Iowa State basketball. Played against Auburn last night in Maui, blew an 18-point lead. What I took out of that, obviously, I mean, I yelled a cuss word really loud when they lost, when they tipped it in or whatever. But that was big boy basketball. And that was a game that you very easily could see in March and late in March, maybe even April. Those teams are good. Iowa State is good. Auburn's really good. That's what you want to see. And they're going to have a chance. They played again Dayton tonight. And then they have a chance to play UConn or North Carolina. There's several teams you're going to play there, but these big-time tournaments, and that's been the question mark with Iowa State. They play these non-conference patsies. Last year went to Florida and played and didn't play very well, but they showed very well yesterday. Came up one basket short, but that's going to be a good loss going forward. Auburn's good. Auburn right now needs to be number 1 in the country. They've won at Houston and then against Iowa State. That's 2 top 5 teams, neither one of them at home. And obviously Maui, everybody's on the road. But just watching that game and the crowd, and it's just fun, and it's awesome to see your favorite team. Iowa State has put themselves in these big tournaments now. They played in the Battle for Atlantis. They played in the Phil Knight Invitational. They're playing in Maui. Next year, they're going to Vegas in that NIL tournament. Iowa State, now don't kid yourself, it helps them being a Nike school. These are kind of, if you look at who's there, it's Nike affiliated stuff, especially the Phil Knight one. But a lot of Nike schools in these events. But you've turned your team, they're not a blue blood yet, but they are approaching that way in the last 10 years. And they're getting rewarded by being in these big time tournaments.
Yeah, that was a good game last night. Didn't end the way you wanted. I was flipping back and forth between that and the Monday Night Football game. But Iowa State, they've really the program's really changed the last few years. And then Auburn, they've been one of the best teams since now I'm having a brain fart on the coach.
Bruce Pearl. They've been to the Final Four. He's been there 11 years now. I'll tell you what.
It doesn't seem like it.
I'm seeing that, a lot of things are 20 years ago, 2004, 2005. Doesn't seem that long ago, but we're getting old, and we've talked about that many times on the podcast here. We're getting old. But, yeah, and it's college basketball in general. And speaking of that, we've talked about this, I believe, last year, going forward, is this the best week of sports in the calendar? Because you've got college football rivalry week this week, and then teams determining who's going to the championship games. You've got these big basketball tournaments. Battle for Atlantis, I think, starts today or tomorrow. So basketball is getting in full swing instead of the directional school state playing everybody. Then obviously you have the NFL on now Thursday, Friday. They don't play this Saturday, right?
I don't think so. I'll check.
Sunday.
They play Sunday, obviously, yeah.
Right. So they got a whole bunch of NFL games. And then in our state, Iowa State plays South Carolina on Thursday, on Thanksgiving in a tournament. So Iowa State, that's I saw a thing somebody put out, Iowa State schedule. Last night was Iowa State versus whoever, and tonight was Iowa State whoever, and tomorrow night they'll play again. No matter win or lose, they play again. And then Thursday they play South Carolina. Friday, I think you have to watch the Colorado game. I think was the schedule because that matters. And then obviously Saturday and I think Iowa State volleyball plays a big match against Kansas on Friday and has a couple too. But lots of stuff to watch on TV, and the weather here in Iowa is not great. I mean, so it's not like you're hanging outside. It's been really nice. Even Sunday was beautiful out. It was 50 degrees and nice, but the weather has definitely turned to winter, so it's not hang out and sit outside by the campfire time anymore.
No, this is definitely one of the best weeks. Obviously, Thursday with NFL, we've got the 3 games like we always do. Bears at Lions. I think that one will be okay. At least you'll get to watch Caleb Williams versus one of the best teams in the league. The early afternoon game between the Giants and the Cowboys.
The snoozer.
Yeah, that's the one I think you take your nap. And then Dolphins at Packers should be pretty good. Both those teams, playoff seeding matters. The Dolphins aren't in right now. Right. But anyway, getting back to some college stuff, this is a really good week. I think another good week is going to be like December 20th to like the first week of January, all those weekends where we get the big playoff games for college
and NFL
and NFL and basketball starts heating up even more. So there's some good ones there. The calendars are filling out pretty well, which is, like you said, it's nice this time of year because it's cold out and what else are you going to do?
Yeah. Sit around and watch, and everybody's going to eat too much and things like that. Let's just touch the NFL just a tad here. Bears figure out another way to lose. They make a great comeback. Caleb Williams, again, is turning – they're not winning, but he is looking better again. And it is the roller coaster ride of being a rookie. Played pretty well at the beginning, had a struggle there for 3-4 games, and now he's back. They're not winning, which I can make an argument that's good that they're not winning because now there's no questions. Mm-hmm. Coach has got to go. But he is playing better, and he is giving his teams a chance. That's all he can do. He can't kick for him. He can't block for him. The specialty, he should have been fired on the spot when they blocked that second kick in a row.
You can't have that 2 weeks in a row.
Right, 2 kicks in a row, not even 2 weeks in a row, 2 kicks in a row. And it was the same guy. And then and I'm not a great kicking. I mean, if I had sat and watched it, I could see it, but maybe the kicker is kicking it a little low. But he made the 47-yarder to tie it. So he's a good kicker when he doesn't get blocked. But the Bears look better. Lions are just throttling everybody. Cowboys are bad, but Jerry, did you see this today? Jerry Jones says that McCarthy might be back.
I heard that when I was driving over here, actually. So I don't think McCarthy's going to be back. I think he's just saying that. Jerry's actually been pretty nice to his coaches over the years.
Right.
Even though him and Jimmy Johnson butted heads. He doesn't really like to – I don't think he likes to embarrass them.
Right.
Which, actually, that's probably a good trait for an owner. But,
right.
Yeah, I would think McCarthy can't come back after this year. It's been a mess. But, yeah, looking at Caleb Williams did play better. That's probably the most important thing this year is he looks like a franchise quarterback. And then this loss, like you said, it just kind of secures that Eberflus is going to be gone.
Yep.
So they're going to get a new coach. You hope the next coach is the right one. But more importantly than anything is you just want to see is Caleb starting to show signs of the number one pick, which he is now.
Yeah, he's playing much better. He get again standing. Here's a question for you. You watch a lot more NFL and all these new quarterbacks, and I think it's just the way it's 7-on-7. It's the way college offenses are. They are so much better outside the pocket. If you just ask them to be Tom Brady, Eli Manning, or Peyton Manning, where you stand in the pocket and just pick people apart, they can't do it. Caleb Williams can't do it. Baker Mayfield can't do it. Kyler Murray can't do it. I mean, just going number one picks down this coming year. Shedeur Sanders, he can't do it. It's just the way the game is played now. But you get them outside the pocket, and they have cannons for arms. They can make throws that Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady can't make because they didn't have those physical tools.
Yeah, those guys couldn't move around like a lot of the young quarterbacks that we're seeing now in the NFL and in college. They're more runners. They're more athletic. Guys like Josh Allen even.
Yeah.
He can scramble. Eli and Peyton were pretty much statues. So they weren't going to do that. But no, Caleb is looking better. You mentioned the Lions are rolling. But another team, though, in the NFC are those Eagles. And Saquon had over 300 yards total offense, a couple touchdowns.
Yeah, 250 yards rushing.
So he's got to be – it's between him, Allen, and I think Lamar right now for MVP would be probably my top three. Jared Goff's – people keep mentioning him. He's having a nice season, but he's not doing what those guys are doing. Right. And I like Jared Goff a lot. So there looks like two legit teams in the NFC right now. The Packers are starting to get on track. They got a little bit of help by Brock Purdy and some others being out in that one. Again, if Jordan Love can stop turning the ball over, then they will be a real threat in the playoffs. And then, the Vikings at 9-2. I just don't trust Sam Darnold to win multiple playoff games. So I like that roster a lot. And then one of the other big stories today is where is Daniel Jones going to sign? And I just heard that he's got it down to 4 teams: the Ravens, the Vikings, the Dolphins, and the 49ers. And 3 of those teams have quarterback injuries.
Right.
The Ravens don't.
Yeah. So obviously, but the Ravens, I think they understand. I mean, the way Lamar plays, he's one hit away from being done.
Mm-hmm.
So they need someone, and Daniel Jones can run a little bit, so they probably wouldn't have to change the offense a lot. So I understand that. And then obviously all the others. Speaking of 49ers and Brock Purdy being hurt, how much did Brock Purdy make more money by him not playing and seeing how bad they are? I mean, I think it's actually going to help him get paid because they see how anemic the offense is without him. Right. They haven't been great with him, but they were awful without him.
Yeah, no, that's a big thing. And for the 49ers, I mean, if they want, they can still franchise him. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily have to pay him this offseason, even though everybody says you have to. Will they? I mean, it seems like these teams do. So my guess would be they're probably going to pay him. But we're starting to see some of the flip side of that, though. These teams that paid quarterbacks when they really shouldn't have, really didn't need to. Daniel Jones already got cut.
Right. How about that? $39 million to not play.
And Trevor Lawrence doesn't look good. Yeah. And, so you wonder if teams now are going to start to pull back on paying guys as quickly. Now,
Brock Purdy, just obviously knowing him from Iowa State, he comes from a family that, obviously we're talking money that nobody has unless your dad was the same way you were or mom, whatever. But he comes from – he's not poor. comes from a dad that played professional sports, minor league baseball. Will he do a contract kind of similar to Patrick Mahomes, where he knows he needs to get paid, but he can't get paid right now if he wants his team to be good? It's got to be backloaded, deferred, Otani. I mean, just that same, because if you go pay him $50 to $60 million, which is probably what he deserves or commands, whatever, then the rest of your team's just not, it's not going to be good enough. And that's what Tom Brady did throughout the years. Mahomes has already kind of done that. I think Purdy wants to win, and he understands that. All their people are getting older, so he needs to win now, yesterday, and tomorrow, not in 3 years.
Yeah, Brock, I don't know if he's going to take a hometown discount like you're kind of mentioning. He might, but it also depends what the number is going to begin with. Is it going to be a 4, a 5, or a 6 for his per year average? And then does San Francisco want to sign maybe to a 3-year deal,
right,
to make him keep like a 3-year, $120 million deal or something like that, 40 or probably be closer to 140, maybe even 150 over 3 years, 45 to 50 per year. So does he want to sign something like that, or is he looking for like a 6, 7, 8-year deal?
Right. And that obviously changes that number of the 4, 5, or 6. Or if you go 7, 8, then you're maybe even 3, But it's just interesting that I didn't watch any of the game or whatever, but just seeing the score and just reading everything and listening to people talk that they missed him, and they, even without all their other people that are hurt, he at least gave them a chance every week. And a lot of times it wasn't his fault. The defense couldn't, kind of like Iowa State's been. They score a touchdown, but then there's a minute and a half left or 2 minutes left, and the defense can't hold them anymore.
Yeah, no, the 49ers got a lot of problems, a lot of injuries. It's an older roster. They've been through a lot of playoffs, those extra games we talk about. That's tough. The Chiefs have been through that too, but the Chiefs defense hasn't looked as good the past couple of weeks. You wonder if some of that's the extra tread of those extra playoff games over the years. But yeah, for Brock Purdy, I do think him not playing a game or two or maybe more, and they even look worse on offense, I think that helps him.
Yeah. Anything else in the NFL, really?
No, like I said, I'm behind this week.
Yep.
There's probably some stuff that we're missing, but no, it should be a good week. Hope everybody enjoys time with family. Lay around Thursday, eat too much food, take some naps, especially during the Cowboys. None of us need to watch that bess of a game.
Yep.
Watch it; it'll probably end up being the best one somehow. But that'll be nap time, and then Friday and Saturday and Sunday, big football all around.
Yeah, Friday night's Friday is a big game. 6 or 6:30 is the Iowa-Nebraska game.
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska has made the bowl game. We talked about they had lost like 9 in a row. They did beat Wisconsin last week, so they are bowl eligible. So they don't have that going for them, but it is just a rivalry game, and both those teams want to beat each other good. And Matt Rule's trying to turn Nebraska around. Iowa's trying to get that 8 wins. We talk about that's kind of the baseline for Iowa should be right now, the way the program is. Still some disarray in the quarterback room, I believe, at Iowa. I read today, I think Chad Lysakow wrote that Stratton's 1, Sullivan and McNamara are practicing, in quotation marks. And who knows, he expects McNamara to suit up and go through senior day, but him and others are 99.9% sure he'll never take another snap for Iowa.
Probably not, but yeah, hopefully he can wear his jersey and everything, run out there, do all that stuff for senior day. But yeah, it's a big one for Iowa. That, like I said, this season's been weird, one of the weirder ones I can remember. But to beat Nebraska on the final week that'd be nice. And if you get to 8-4, you're still going to play a pretty decent bowl game. So it's not as exciting, but whenever that bowl game is, the 31st, 1st, 2nd, whatever day it would be now, I'm still going to be excited to watch.
Yeah, everybody's going to turn in and watch. The difference is, and this is going to be interesting, and I think this is a conversation we have coming up, is the Citrus Bowl or the Gator Bowl or the Outback Bowl. And I know the names have changed. I understand. I don't think the Outback Bowl exists anymore. There's still the game, but it's just not called the Outback Bowl.
Should be called the Iowa Hawkeye Bowl.
It should be. But those games still are existing. do the fans go like they used to? Iowa and Iowa State are historically teams that take 10 to 20, 30,000 people to these games. It will be interesting to see how many people go to these now. I've went to several Iowa State bowl games. Already said, going to the Big 12 championship if they go. 99% chance I'll go to a playoff game. Obviously, a little bit schedule, a little bit where it's at does matter. But 99. But if they don't win the Big 12 championship and they go to a bowl game, 99% chance I'm not going. They go to Memphis again for some reason, I'm out.
Yeah.
Last year really soured me on. Now all the stuff's fun going, but the game, you got players not playing in it, the coaches and teams in general, and you can't blame them. Their job between, starting I think December 4th or December 2nd, something, is to keep your team intact or go sign other people. That's your job. It's not worrying about the bowl game. Now, if you're in the playoff contention, you got to have other people doing that because your coaches are trying to win. Because, upsets and stuff do not happen in football as much as basketball. But, hey, anything can happen. Vanderbilt was a 23-point underdog to Alabama. Northern Illinois was a 25-point underdog to Notre Dame. Those things do happen. So you have to be ready to go. But if you're playing Memphis or you're playing Central State University, whatever, in Orlando, that game doesn't, because that is an exhibition game. Playoff game is not an exhibition. But the exhibition bowl games, it will be interesting to see. And that's not just Iowa and Iowa State. That's just everybody in general. Like Ole Miss, now that they're most likely out of the playoff, when they go play in the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, who's going to watch? Because all their fans are ready to go to the playoff.
Yeah, a lot of it will depend on the matchups. Do you
Right.
play like a well-known school,
right.
or do you play a team that really nobody knows about? That'll play a part. I think attendance will be down a little just all around, and that's just because of the playoff. A lot of teams have kind of had their hearts ripped out this season by not being able to make the playoffs. So I think attendance, my guess, will probably be down for the bowl games. But if you get one where Iowa plays an LSU or an Ole Miss, I think Iowa fans will be excited for that. Now, Ole Miss and LSU might not be. So We'll see what happens. But I do think attendance will be down a little.
Yeah, especially for Iowa and Iowa State, I believe. Especially, Iowa, yes, if they win, they're 8-4, but that is a disappointing year for Iowa. And for some reason, if Iowa State would lose if they get to the Big 12 championship and lose it, you're disappointed because of what could have been. But even if you would have been undefeated and you're in that Big 12 championship game and you lose it, now, if you're 12-1, you're probably in the playoff, especially with what's happened. So you could be disappointed. But with one or two losses, it was always going to be a crapshoot whether you're in the playoff if you didn't win the Big 12. So you're probably in that same spot just for three. It just, again, depends on where and it depends on who.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, like places like Memphis, you've been there before.
Yep.
Probably no reason to go back again.
But if
you go to a new destination, maybe somewhere you haven't been, then that changes things.
Or even the Alamo Bowl, which was really fun. The Alamo Bowl was awesome. And say you play Ole Miss or LSU, kind of those same teams. They're big-time teams, just missed the playoff. That would be a fun thing. And I was listening to Inside Zones of Cyclone Fanatic 1, and it had Jarrell Brock and Jake Remsburg. And I thought they were great. They made a joke. They were making some joke about gambling, and those are two guys that got in trouble for gambling at Iowa State. They're like, ask the experts. We're the experts. It was really funny. So right at the end of that, so tune into that. But they said, and this is, you kind of got to look back over the last 5, 6, 7 years of Campbell. They played Notre Dame. They played Clemson. They played Oregon. They played Oklahoma in a Big 12 championship game. Iowa State has played some really good teams and the powers of college football. Now, the years they played those teams, Clemson, that was the one year they didn't make the playoff. Oregon got in because a team couldn't get there because of COVID. They were 4-2 or 4-3, whatever. Notre Dame, they missed the playoff as well. But those were two of Iowa State's best years ever. And then they played Washington State in the Alma Bowl as well, which was, that was Gardner Minshew and it was Mike Leach. And that was a great year because both Iowa State and Washington State were both ecstatic about being there because they aren't there all the time. Mm-hmm. Both kind of outposts in college football. And just Mike Leach is just a national treasure that we miss every day. And I would love to hear him talking about the playoff and the committee and everything. I mean, we all see that stuff. And I so wish he was still around just to bash on the committee.
Yeah, he would talk about the playoff and nobody would even understand what he's saying.
No, but it was awesome.
He'd be good to have on the TV with those guys that do it, which that's tonight. So we'll find out, right? The show is tonight, right?
Yep, 6 or 6:30. It changes every time, and I know there's college basketball on, so it might be but in a halftime. It's interesting. The spots that are interesting are Boise State, Arizona State, and then how far does Indiana fall? And then which teams of the SEC are ranked? Are they putting Ole Miss ahead of Alabama? Is Alabama ahead of Ole Miss? Those are the interesting ones. Who's that 3-loss SEC team that's going to get in? Is it Alabama or is it Ole Miss?
Yeah, I don't know who it's going to be, but you're right. I'm probably most interested to see how they rank the SEC teams tonight.
Right. Yeah.
It's because everybody in the SEC is losing outside of like Texas and Georgia. So outside of those two teams, I'm probably most interested to see how they do with the SEC.
Yeah. All right, that's probably good enough today, Trev. We're a little less than an hour. Everybody enjoy your Thanksgiving time. A lot of travel tomorrow. So those of you that tune in and listen to us, we definitely appreciate it. Rate, like, subscribe on all the different things, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. And then, you're with family. Maybe you like your family, maybe not. If you don't like them and you want to put them out on us, having them listen to us, we're perfectly fine with that. We're okay with just being hate listened to. But if you do like us, give this to your friends and family as well and try to spread the podcast the best you can. But overall, have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll be back next week. I will say this, if Iowa State does get to the Big 12 championship game, I may con Trevor or somebody into an extra podcaster. So
I could probably make that work.
Yeah.
Most likely.
So, all right. Thanks a lot. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.
Be safe.